evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Marsh, and I will be marshalling the proceedings this evening. The OUR is facilitating this consultation this evening to create a forum in which the JPS can explain the major aspects of its application, and for customers to make comments, seek clarifications, and generally ask questions about the JPS's presentation. We hope at the end of our meeting this evening you would have left sufficiently satisfied that your views were heard and you are more informed about what the JPS is proposing. At this point, I will introduce members of the head table, beginning with my immediate left. The Senior Vice President in charge of Service Delivery, Mr. Gary Barrow. The President and CEO of the JPS, Ms. Kelly Tomlin. The Chief Financial Officer of the JPS, Dan Theoc. And there are also a plethora of JPS executives and other members of staff here this evening coming out for support and, of course, to assist in the process. We have a contingent as well from the Office of Regulation. And right now, our Director General is here, Mr. Albert Gordon. Mr. Gordon. Our Deputy Directors General, Mr. Hopton Heron. And Mr. Chavez, you can't get to Chavez is way in the back. We also have several directors, Mr. Ansel Hewitt. He has a very long title, Regulation, Policy, Monitoring, and Enforcement. Our General Counsel, Sherry Lewis, is also here. Yvonne Greenham-Nicholson is our Director of Consumer and Public Affairs. Mrs. Carolyn Young is our Director of Administration and Human Resources. She's assisting with the help desk at the back. I will speak to that a bit later. And there are a whole host of other OUR executives, including the project officer who is working on the JPS application, Winston Robotham, and other persons. The JPS and the OUR have set up help desks to assist customers who may have issues with their bills, who may want to make queries about their accounts, or who want to learn more about the two entities. Please utilize the help desk personnel as they are here to assist you. We want to focus our public discussion here this evening on the JPS application, the JPS guaranteed standards to you, the customers, and other related matters. Welcome one and all. We look forward to a robust discussion this evening in an atmosphere filled with mutual respect. At this point in time, I'll make a small presentation about the role and function of the OUR and why such a consultation is important. Now, the Office of Utilities Regulation was established to regulate the provision of utility services in the areas of electricity, telecommunications, transport, which is road, rail, and ferry, and water and sewage. The role of the OUR includes developing the framework within which the regulated entities should operate, setting the rates and service standards for some of the regulated sectors. Operating in an independent and transparent manner is a very important part of what the OUR does. We have several objectives. Among them are to ensure that consumers of utility services enjoy an acceptable quality of service at a reasonable cost, and the quality of service will be foremost in our minds this evening as we listen to the JPS make its case. To promote the long-term efficient provision of utility services for national development consistent with the government's policy. To provide an avenue of appeal for consumers who have grievances with utility providers such as the JPS, the NWC, Digicel, Lime, and Flow. The OUR provides redress for consumers who may be aggrieved on one matter or another with utility companies. We urge them to first follow the complaints procedure at their service provider. In this case, it would be JPS. If it is that you are not satisfied with the decision made by the JPS, then we are what you called your avenue of appeal. You appeal the JPS's decision to us. And there is the approved guaranteed standard scheme, which sets out 13, but really 18 guaranteed standards to which we hold the JPS accountable to you, the customer. Now, what is the role of the OUR in this particular consultation? As you may by now be aware, the JPS has submitted a tariff review application to the OUR for the period 2014 to 2019. Public consultation is a part of the consideration of that application. It's very important. We're hoping that the consultation will allow the JPS to inform members of the public about the specifics of their application, what they're asking the OUR to consider, and for you, the customers, to query any aspects and comment on the guaranteed standards that we have set for the JPS. The OUR will not be making the case for the JPS. The JPS will make presentations. Questions pertaining to the application should be directed at them. Will your views matter? Yes, they will. The OUR will be writing what we call a consumer chapter in the application, in the determination that the OUR makes. The consumer chapter details the substance of the customer's input during these consultations. This document is incorporated in the final decision the OUR makes on the application. Now, after this evening, the consultation does not end. After the period of public consultation, the consultation period does not end. We invite you, sometimes you hear things here that you're hearing for the first time. You didn't get the opportunity to go on our website and view the application, and you want to continue to make an input. We have set up a special email address for you to do just that. It is also on your program, so you don't have to write it down. It is jpstariff@our.org or org.jm. For those who tend to prefer the traditional mailing system, please send us your mail at PCJ Building, 3rd floor, 36 Trafalgar Road, Kingston 10, and we're listed in the directory. Our telephone number is also in the directory for those who would prefer to take up the phone and call us, and please ask for the Public Affairs Department. Now, the guaranteed standards is another way in which you can make your views count. They will be reviewed for the 5-year period, and your input, as we said, matters. The OUR has created 14 guaranteed standards for the JPS. 3 of these have various components, so when you consider those additional components, it's really 18 guaranteed standards. The JPS is proposing modification to its current guaranteed standards. Now, in addition to that, we want to hear from you regarding the guaranteed standards, so we have created a 1-page questionnaire. It should look like this, and you should all have got one. All non-JPS, non-OUR personnel should have got a copy. If you haven't got a copy, please visit our help desk to the back, to my right. We ask you to fill these out. It's very, very important because we want to gauge your view about the guaranteed standards that are in place. When you look at it, because you should also get a brochure documenting the guaranteed standards. I think JPS would also have copies of it, right, Winsome, at your help desk? Yes. Please look at it. If it is that you feel that there needs to be some amendment, then feel free to make the notation on this as well. So I told you my presentation was going to be very short, right? Because you really came to hear the JPS make its case, and you really came to express your views about what the JPS is proposing. And so without further ado, I invite the first speaker from the JPS. Your program will indicate that there will be 3 persons speaking on behalf of the JPS in a very concise presentation. They are Ms. Kelly Tomlin, the President and CEO, followed by Mr. Gary Barrow, the Senior Vice President of Energy Delivery at the JPS, and the Chief Financial Officer, the money man, Dan Theok, will also be making the presentation. So at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause for Ms. Kelly Tomlin?
Thank you for coming here to discuss this very important matter, the investment we're going to make over the next 5 years in your electric system and the impact it will have on your rates. I would love to stand here tonight and say I'm pleased to be here, but the truth is I come here with very mixed emotions. On the one hand, I as a human being and I as a leader of this organization take no pleasure in asking for a rate increase. On the other hand, it is imperative, I believe, that we support the national agenda that's focused on growth, and we continue the path that we started at least a couple years ago in improving customer service. My job is a brief one, really, to take us through why we're here, and I suspect you know it better than I, but that's my job, and I'm going to try to do it. To explain in brief what our proposal is, to talk about the initiatives that we've deployed so far with the money that you've already given us, and talk a little bit about how you'll benefit going forward if our plan is approved. It goes without saying that JPS, as I say sometimes and my staff corrects me, is a highly regulated company. We do not set our own rates, and we do come before you every 5 years for the major rate investment and recasting. Now, I hesitate when I say that because my customers say, my bill changes every month. Don't say this is the once in every 5-year thing. It seems to be an every month thing. And it's true, there's certain portions of your bill, and I'll go over that does change. But this is when we come together and decide what we're really going to invest over the next 5 years in the system. Now, this portion is for the non-fuel portion, and I know you've heard me say many times that there's two portions of your bill, the non-fuel and the fuel portion. The fuel portion is 70% of your bill. What we're talking about today is the 30%, the non-fuel portion. That portion is set by the OUR. The other rate, your fuel rate is set by the market. And that's the piece that you see fluctuating every month. I got a call last month, your rates went up 15%. I said, my rates didn't go up. What happened is the fuel bill went up. This month you'll see another fluctuation. So we do want to clarify that going forward. And I know it goes without saying again, we don't make a profit on the fuel rate. I like to say I'm just a bill collector for Petrojam. I get your money, usually, and then I try to send it on to Petrojam. And I get paid in Jamaican dollars, and I have to pay in US dollars, but that's for another day. I'll complain about that. Again, there are some other adjustments that I know you know about. We're adjusted monthly for some of the FX movement, and on annually for some efficiency improvements, some quality of service, and for the acts of God. So you do have several different adjustments going on, but really this is for a 5-year rate case. And I think it's always important to look at what's happened over time, and especially the past 11 years, in the fuel portion, the non-fuel portion. What I have in front of you is the non-fuel portion, and that's the piece we're talking about today. And while it's gone up, I would say that in nominal terms it's gone up relatively smoothly and relatively consistently over time. And if you can look at since the last rate case in 2009, we've gone from 11.2 cents to 13.5 cents. And why that has been an adjustment, it's one that doesn't shock the conscience. I think when we start to look, though, at what's happened with their fuel rate, and we all know this, and I always think I'm so repetitive, but foreign oil is our one true enemy. It's our collective enemy. The idea that it drives our prices up and it makes them hard to manage because they fluctuate so much. And we're taking steps right now to minimize that and prepare for a long-term future where we attack that. But today we are here to talk about the other portion of your bill. I'm just going to ask Dan to come up, go through our proposal. I know this community renewal rate comes up. Okay, Dan Theok, our CFO.
How exactly will customers be affected? Let's just get down to the brass tacks. In terms of the residential customers, which we call rate 10, and the small commercial customers, which we call rate 20, in terms of improving the fixed cost recovery, we're going to replace, or we're requesting of the OUR, to replace customer charge with the network access charge. The network access charge will cover both customer charge and the capacity charge. And again, the energy business is kind of like any large infrastructure business. It really is about providing capacity. So, 15 years ago when you acquired internet service, you would pay per hour. Today you appreciate internet's about capacity. You pay based on how much capacity you want. The same thing is true with energy. Your cost is highly related to the amount of capacity that you want us to have on standby or reserved for you. So in the rate 10s and 20s, we're going to be introducing the network access charge. And for rate 40s and 50s, we'll be changing up that structure a little bit. The demand charge will become a stronger feature of their bill, and the energy charge will actually go away. Today, for rate 10s, for instance, all we have is the 100 kilowatt-hour lifeline rate, and then after that, you have a different rate. We've actually analyzed our customer profile and decided to create 3 stratas, 0 to 100, 100 to 500, and over 500 kilowatt hours per month. In general, the network access charge, which is the capacity charge will be increasing the larger amount of power that you use. And what that will look like in terms of the 3 blocks. Today, 41% of our customers actually use less than 100 kilowatt hours per month. Their bill today is about 2,000 J, and with our rate increase, as we've requested, what we've proposed, that bill would go up by about $340 per month. That's about $10 a day. For the next tier of customers who use between 100 and 500 kilowatt hours, that's about 56% of our customers. Their bill today is about 7,900 J, and that will increase by about $1,600 if approved as we've asked for, which is about an increase of about $50 per day. The typical residential customer really uses about 154 kilowatt hours per month when you average everything out. So the typical customer really has a bill of about $6,200, and they'll see that increasing by $1,300, which is about $40 per day. In the rate 20 category, we're going to have 4 tiers, and they're described there: 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 7,500, and over 7,500. And again, because we're strong on the growth agenda, in this case, you're going to see the energy charge reducing the more you use, but the capacity charge will increase with each rate block. The result will look something like this, and we have approximately 60,000 small commercial customers, but it's important to note that the customers that use more than 7,500 kilowatt hours per month, that's only 2% of that customer base, about 992, but that they actually constitute about 31% of the sales in that group. So what we're seeing is the typical rate 20 customer using over 7,500 kilowatts, his bill's actually about $700,000 a month. That is to say he's using 17,000 kilowatts, and that's as much as 40 times larger than a typical residential customer or even the other persons in the rate 20 group. And that's why we do believe we have to look at reducing their energy charge. So again, from the cost of service study, these are customers usually taking power at the higher voltage level, and it's also cheaper to serve them. And so we do believe in terms of supporting growth, that's why it's important that the price signal that we're sending to them really is going to encourage them to continue growing, to continue creating employment. We're also asking for the introduction of an industrial tariff or wholesale tariff for customers who have demand in excess of 1 MVA, single point demand in excess of 1 MVA. These are customers whose consumption is typically much larger than residential customers, and we do need to make the point that of our 603,000 customers, the 2,800 largest customers, which is about 0.5% of our customer numbers, represents 50% of all sales. So it is very important that for these largest industrial customers that we have an attractive tariff for them that again allows us to push that growth agenda. A typical rate 50 customer has consumption equivalent to about 5,000 residential customers. And some of our largest industrial customers can represent sales equivalent to 20,000 residential customers. These are the largest customers usually that own their own transformers, take power from the high voltage level, and from our cost of service study, this is the reason why we believe that we do need to have a cost adjustment that helps them see somewhere between a 2 to 8% tariff reduction.
We'll now open the floor, and we are now ready to take your questions and make your comments.
Based on your application, what you are requesting on the non-fuel portion of your bill is 70% increase. Meaning that when you take away the 70, in order for you to get 20%, you have to have 70% of the 30% in order for you to get the 20%. The 20% that you are saying will apply to that. I think that is totally unacceptable.
A community renewal program with a flat rate that you pay that it's associated with the usage would be acceptable. We just know today people who don't pay use twice as much, or at least, than the people who do pay. We also know that conservation energy efficiency going forward is going to keep us from turning on that power plant at 6:30 to 9:30. It uses twice as much fuel. We think it's really important as a national agenda to be really wise how we spend those fuel dollars. And as far as JPS goes, we've worked very hard. We've taken $10 million US out of our O&M. We're committed. As I think everyone knows, there's going to be an OUR audit. We've been doing our own audits, best practices, to see how we can continue to decrease our costs and continue to deliver what we deliver used to be per month. So we're working really hard with our customers. We're going to continue to do that.
One of the areas that interests me quite a lot is the unregulated, and I guess the OER should speak to it, the unregulated voltage frequency, and in particular for rate 10 and 20 customers that have a very bad power factor. Some customers like myself have very good power factor, but yet still we are being subsidized for customers that have bad power factor. Can there be something, I guess more from the OER and Elizabeth, that can regulate both voltages? Because we know that when I've been told that whenever JPS needs extra revenue at the end of the month, they increase the voltage, because even though the voltage goes up, your consumption goes up. And so I believe that some regulatory mechanism ought to be in the tariff for voltage and frequency, and some penalties accordingly. And for users such as myself that has very good power factor, I should not be penalized in lumping up bad power factor in your general tariff for technical losses.
We had such a strong negative reaction to an announcement.
I was just kidding.
I know you were, but the truth of it is people are asking us that, where are you going to have it? The truth is it has to be needs-based. It has to be part of a similar path program. It has to be for a transition period. As someone mentioned, people who haven't paid for 50 years, and it has to be usage-based.
Jamaica and the transport sector, the Water Commission, and every other business that uses energy is going to continue to face deep challenges as long as we are paying foreign exchange to import fuel, regardless of the fuel type, whether it be coal, gas, or oil. As long as we are importing fuel and using foreign exchange to pay for that, the country is going to be facing serious challenges. I'm a renewable energy professional not because I think it's cool or it's fancy. I think it is the way forward. It is the only hope. And as such, my question to the OER and the JPS is that I have been observing and experimenting and trying equipment and basically testing renewable energy, particularly solar systems. And since 2006, for example, solar panel prices have gone down 60%. The equipment keeps going down in price. Fuel keeps going up in price. How do the JPS and the OUR plan to deal with the competitive advantage that renewable energy gets every time you raise your prices? Because I can tell you this, I am planning to make JPS irrelevant to me. That's a threat. And the higher you raise your prices, the easier it gets for me. Because I can now justify the spending, the amount of money I'm going to have to spend. And it can take maybe 7 years worth of JPS light bill or 10 years to make JPS irrelevant. So the higher you raise your prices, the more dangerous that comes to you. How do you plan to deal with that?
We certainly understand that when we raise our prices that there would be more incentive for people to look at all their options. I think that the audience does know that we do sell a solar mill to help where it is appropriate. We have a net billing situation that 150 or so of our customers have taken advantage of, and we expect that to move forward. And I think we're in a position that we're saying put the power in your hands. What we're also saying, though, is that make sure it makes sense for you for long term and don't make a decision based on today, because we do know that with new generation and lower fuel costs in the form of gas, that we are looking at least a 20% reduction. So we're just saying, be smart, don't take 20% reduction lightly, and making sure that for the long term that makes sense for you.
I noticed that the finance guy, I don't remember his name, sorry, he didn't go into any detail really about the proposed revenue, so-called revenue cap. Our renewable energy guy asked the question, how is JPS gonna deal with renewable energy and when it takes away your demand? The answer to that question is the revenue cap. You're gonna use the consumers who remain on your grid to pay for the demand that you lose when people go over to renewable energy. My comment is that I think it's disingenuous to call it a revenue cap, because what the JPS is asking for is a guaranteed revenue stream. So if we as consumers decide to tighten our belts, reduce our demand, and you don't collect the revenue that you expect to collect, you want to shoot the rates up so that you can get that revenue next year. So the revenue cap is a misnomer. It's not a cap. It's more of a guarantee return on revenue. The question now is, well, I'm not in agreement with it, and OUR, my instruction is to throw the revenue cap through the window and stick with the price cap. I prefer a price cap, not a revenue cap. Now, what would you be using to calculate that revenue cap? The guy from West Kingston, he mentioned it. You didn't respond to his comment, and you didn't answer the renewable energy guy. So hopefully you'll answer me. What would be going into calculating this so-called revenue cap?
But there's a lot of different models that work. The truth is that our costs, 89% of them are fixed costs. As you, I'm assuming, know, that our generation right now is more IPP focused and will be more and more IPP focused. Their costs are fixed costs. So whether we call it a price cap, a rate cap, the fact of it is that we have to invest so much every year. And when people go off the grid, historically in any market, it results in whoever's left paying more. That's the reason we're working really hard to keep our largest loads on the grid, because when they go off, when 3 MVA goes off, that's, and Dan correct me, up to 30,000 customers going off the grid. So the truth is, it is better in every market when people stay on the grid, so we're trying to promote that. And I think there was another question, Dan, that you wanted to answer? Oh. Yeah, no?
So on the revenue cap, there's nothing disingenuous about it. Large infrastructure projects that have large fixed costs should have tariffs that are cost reflective. So if 89% of the non-fuel costs are fixed, then theoretically speaking, 89% of your tariff should be fixed. So 70% of the overall cost to you is fuel. That's variable. Whenever you conserve, you're going to reduce your bill by that 70% portion. As it relates to the non-fuel cost, the fixed component, we're simply saying to the regulator that we have to have certainty of revenue to allow us to continue making the large investment required to keep the grid working. And that's very common practice all around the world in large infrastructure projects, whether it's a toll road project, whether it's a utility, whether it's a water commission. There's nothing disingenuous about it. So the focus is ensuring that the utility is allowed to recover its prudently incurred costs. That's what the focus really is.
Quite aware with over 100,000 persons stealing electricity. I don't know how you come up with a figure as to how much it's costing you. What is the plan that the JPS has working with the government to ensure that this cost is reduced and that this can impact the consumer in terms of electricity cost?
Gary did go over that in some detail, but I will just summarize and I'll let Gary, we do believe there needs to be a new plan, and we call it a holistic plan where we see a number of different initiatives, stronger legislation, stronger penalties, and when you have fines that they go back to the consumer and JPS rather than the court system. But again, we're facing a very significant situation. We took down 200,000. I want to say that over and over, almost 200,000 throw-ups last year. We know that we have almost 200,000 people of illegal users. It is a spiral that we keep doing again and again. We take down the throw-ups, they put them up. The only people that are gaining from this is whoever sells this wire. So we know that that doesn't work, so how do we support that? How do we get people back on the grid? And I go into these communities, and there's different as anything. I remember sitting in a community close to my home where they're saying to me, Kelly, we don't want to steal. Help me get onto the grid. Help me get my house wired. Those need a different solution. And they are embarrassed. They say, you think I want to steal power? I don't want to steal power. Help me get on. Help me administratively. For a lot of our customers, it's administrative solutions, being able not to give them a bill at the end of the month after they've already used it, then they can't afford it. And we have to work on that. So I think the answer to us is to have a myriad of solutions that really speak to the reason behind the theft.
I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening on this very important matter. I would like to thank the members of the head table, Dan Theok, Kelly Tomlin, Gary Barrow, as well as the persons who made significant contributions this evening, Earl Dawkins, Roger Chang, Alan Searchwell, Kirk Wignall, Jerry Lindo. I think I heard Orville Burke in there somewhere as well, and another gentleman whose name I did not get. Thank you so much. The dialogue continues. Please walk good. Be safe. Thank you.